Hello, Econ students. Let's continue our discussion on business organizations by looking at corporations. The third type of business organization is a corporation. It's the one that you are likely most familiar with. A corporation is a legal entity. It is a business of its own. It needs a government charter, and then the business typically sells shares in itself. So a share is just a portion of the business. So it becomes a legal entity because it gets a government charter, and then it sells shares so that it can have the financial capital, the money to be in business. Some of the corporate states of America, these are some of the corporations and a lot of them are where they began, like Starbucks. We all know Starbucks started out in Washington in the Seattle area. Coors started in Colorado. Caterpillar is very big in, Caterpillar right here, I'm sorry. Caterpillar is very big in Illinois. Harley-Davidson's huge in Wisconsin. General Motors is big in Michigan. Hershey's is big in Pennsylvania. Wendy's hamburgers started in Ohio. I know that for sure. I believe Denny's restaurants did begin in South Carolina, and we know Coca-Cola began here. So those are all some of the different Tabasco sauce started in Louisiana. Oh, been to LL Bean. That's a pretty cool store to go to up there in Maine. So that's just a little bit of interesting of where everything has started. Oh, Apple Computer, your favorite, over here in California. All right, advantages of being a corporation. There's ease of raising financial capital, so it's really easy for a corporation to get money. Banks typically don't mind lending a corporation money. They are going to get paid back. If a corporation goes out of business, they're more certain of being paid back than if they lend money to a partnership or a sole proprietorship. They also can sell stocks, which are shares of themselves, and they can sell bonds, which is a way of them taking a loan out from individuals. We'll talk about those a little bit more in detail later. Managerial expertise. People want to work and they want to work for big corporations. Typically, a lot of people do want to work for big corporations. So you have a lot of different people with different experiences and different ways of communicating things and different abilities to manage your business. Limited liability. So you can only lose the amount that you paid into the company. So companies, they lend money, they get money from banks, so they have to pay that back. But the stocks usually go to individuals like you and me. So you can only lose the amount of stock, the amount of money you put into stock. So let's say you paid $5,000 for stock, which seems like a lot of money, but let's just say you paid $5,000 for some stock. But the business goes out, you're out your $5,000. You're not out your $5,000, your house, your car, anything else. Unlimited life. The business does not just end when the person that started the business dies. They have an unlimited life. So one of the big businesses that you're probably familiar with, even if you don't think you are, is Procter & Gamble. They started back in the 1800s and they're still in business today. They are a corporation. I'll give you some examples of those guys later. Ease of transferring ownership. So I can sell my stocks to somebody else, or I can buy some stocks. You're transferring ownership, because stock is just part ownership in a company. Some disadvantages of corporations. They're difficult to start and maintain. You have to get a charter. You cannot be a corporation without a charter. You have to have government to say it's okay that you're a corporation. So it's much more complicated to start a corporation. They're more difficult to maintain because there's so many pieces, so many moving parts and pieces all the time. And you have to have, it's hard in the beginning to make some money on those, in any business really. Shareholders have little say in how the company is run. So as a shareholder, you get to make shareholders or a stockholder, you get to make big decisions. You get to vote on board members and things like that. But then the company itself is run by the people in the company. You don't really have any say on how it's run. Double taxation. This is where the money that the business makes is taxed twice. So a business makes money and they get taxed on that profit, the money they make, the profit. They distribute some of this profit as dividends, and you as a shareholder pay a tax on that. So that's called double taxation. That profit, it's only one profit, has been taxed twice. Once on the corporate level, once on the stockholder level. There's a lot more government regulation when it comes to corporations. They're so huge and they can affect our country and our economy in so many different ways that there are tons of regulations when it comes to corporations. There's like the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has some regulations on them. There'll be Securities and Exchange Commission will have regulations on businesses. All right, so the next thing is preferred stock. What is a preferred stock? It's, again, the stock is just ownership in a corporation. A preferred stock, remember we prefer money, so preferred stock, we get a first cut of the dividends. The dividends are the money we get off the profit. So the first cut is of dividends, but we don't have any voting rights. So it's really important to us to get the money. We don't really care about the voting, because we know voting is just the big picture decision making anyway. I don't know if this one is a preferred stock or not, but I think it's a beautiful stock. Walt Disney stock is a beautiful stock certificate because it's so pretty and colorful. All right, common stock is the other type of stock. Again, it's ownership in the business, but this one you do get voting rights and you can get a share of the dividends. So you can get some money. So common voting rights is the first thing you get. You can get a share of the dividends. You may not. The advantage of being a preferred stockholder is if there are dividends, you're going to get dividends, no matter what. A common stockholder, you can vote and you may or may not get dividends. If there's nothing left after they've paid the preferred stockholders, then you're not getting any dividends. But you will always get to vote as a common stockholder. All right, we're going to talk about bonds next. Bond is just long-term borrowing. So when a company sells a bond, it's wanting to borrow money for a longer period of time. Some of the components or pieces of a bond are the principal, and that's just the money that's been borrowed. Then you have the interest rate, and that's just the yearly cost of borrowing. And that's expressed as a percent of the principal. So it might say I borrowed $1,000 at 10% interest. And then the maturity date, and that's just the date that the principal has to be paid back. So if I buy a bond for $1,000 and the maturity date is June of 2016, then on June of 2016, the principal has to be paid back. And there's an example of a U.S. savings bond. Typically, bonds earn some interest on them. And if you have a savings bond, you can look it up and see how much interest that you have earned on that bond.